At this time, I'll call the January Board of Commissioners meeting to order. And just so that you're aware, Commissioner Langley will not be with us tonight, or Commissioner Rebholz. Commissioner Richardson will be back with us somewhere between 6 and 6:15. So we'll get started. I ask that you stand, and I'll give the invocation, and Commissioner Walker will do the pledge. Father, we thank you for the new year. We thank you for the opportunity we have to serve. We thank you for what this community means to each one of us. We ask that you be with us as we go through the business session. Give us wisdom and the knowledge that we need. For all these things we ask in your holy and most righteous name. Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll ask that if you have your phone, please cut it off or put it in the silent mode. We're down to conflict of interest disclosure. Does any of the commissioners have anything that they need to disclose before we start our agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. I'm going to pull the County Police Force Committee, which is K1. Is there any other changes? If not, I'm sorry.
And you have a short closed session regarding economic development.
Okay, we need to add that to the agenda, which will be at the end. Brian?
It's on your amended agendas that I handed out. And you also need to pull the workforce development one for me.
Okay, we'll do that under consent.
Make a motion to approve.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. We're down to the first item is service award presentation. Dolores?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We have one Beaufort County employee here tonight to receive their award. Is Ms. Christina Smith, our Public Works Director, and she now has 10 years of service.
Thank you for your service.
And I do have a couple of other employees to acknowledge. Ms. Christy Simmons with the Department of Social Services has 20 years of service. And Mr. Stacy Harris with the Health Department has 25 years of service, and they're not here tonight. So, congratulations to them as well.
Share our thanks, Dolores, with the other two.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to the audit presentation for fiscal year 21-22. Anita?
Mr. Chairman, I don't see that the auditor has arrived yet. He's driving from Whiteville, North Carolina. He is here? Or did he just walk in? Wonderful.
Okay. Good timing. Good timing. That's what you call time management.
Yes, this is Mr. Thompson from Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams CPAs, and he'll be presenting the audit for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. And we do have a handout.
Welcome.
So good evening, everyone. Happy New Year to you as well. And on this presentation summary, if you'd be kind enough to flip to page 1, I'm going to read a couple headlines to make sure I'm following what I'm supposed to do. But no significant audit findings, no difficulties encountered in performing the audit, no uncorrected misstatements, no disagreements with management, Management provided us with a representation letter dated November 14th. We're unaware that management consulting outside accountants, auditors, etc. And the only findings, issues, etc. were some technical findings at DSS with no money involved, etc., just technicalities. To follow that up, traditionally, or on most of them, especially this year, if you've ever had a finding, the LGC might send you a letter, etc., and everybody's got to respond to it. And the LGC did away with that 6/30/21. And they asked the auditor to address anything and then respond back. You have nothing to respond to, which is awesome. Good for you as a board, finance staff, management, etc. On page 4, if we can take a look at some of the numbers, I don't say these are all the key numbers in the audit report, but there's some of the key numbers in the audit report that people ask about a lot. And what we try to do is put them in the first column here and then put the prior 4 years beside it so you get some feel or context of what it looks like, or any trends that might be involved. So total fund balance in your general fund is $39,716,228. If you go back to 18, you can see that number is $20,035,000. Unavailable fund balance is $7.479. Restricted is $3.5 million. Total general fund expenditures at $63,573,000, and then fund balance available as a percentage is 50.71%. And you can see a good trend going there. Unassigned fund balance at $28,729,000, and then unassigned fund balance at $45.19. Total revenues over and on expenses before transfers, etc., is in the general fund is $12,649,000. And your solid waste is $208,000, and water districts is $1,197,000. Your cash and your accumulated depreciation, your water fund is $89 million total fixed assets, $29 accumulated depreciation, and $12 million in cash. I say this probably every year, but what you're really looking for there is cash flow and not necessarily fund balance or net position. So obviously you can see the increase in cash over the period of time, which is what you're trying to accomplish there to make sure it's operating properly. Cash in your fund balance net position, cash in general fund is $37,800,000. Again, you go back to 18, it's $20,252,000. In the water districts, it's $12,110,000. Solid waste is $1,121,000, and then other governmentals, it's $15,085,000. Fund balance again in general fund is 39.7. Water district's net position is $36 million. Solid waste is $1,005,000, and other governmentals it's $14 million. You can see your property tax rates there next, along with your collection percentages, both with and without motor vehicles, and that motor vehicle thing doesn't really apply like it used to. Then you can see your property valuation for the 5 years, your levy amounts for the 5 years, and then you can see the debt there as well. And you can see your debt declining over the 5-year period to almost $56 million in 18 and $48,256,000 in the current year. On page 5, you can see a breakdown of your general fund revenues, along with a breakdown of your general fund expenditures. I will say this, so when you're comparing it, you get a feel for it. Under your expenditures, I hope my memory's pretty close to right on this. You got about $7 million in ARPA, right at it.
9.1 million.
Okay, sorry. A lot of that money was spent on public safety, reducing salaries, benefits, etc. And that when you compare across the 5 years, you'll see a dip in the current year for public safety, and that's where ARPA money was used to reduce some of those costs. This also may have an impact on why you had a nice little bump in your general fund this year as well. And you can see that's in a note down there at the bottom. On page 6, you can see that fund balance, total fund balance in blue and restricted there in red. And then you can see on the bottom of that page the percentage of fund balance available for the county in blue, for the group weighted average in red. Traditionally, we've tried to show those group weighted averages going forward. I understand they're not going to have near the meaning they may have or have had in the past, because the LGC's made a determination they're going to do group weighted averages everybody above 100 million in budget and everybody below 100 million. So it's going to make it very hard to have comparisons, where I think used to just about every 10 units they did it, it was easier to make a good comparison. On the top of page 7, you see unassigned fund balance as a percentage going from 25.47 up to 45.19. And then on the bottom, you can see where all your funds were had revenues over expenditures. And then on page 8, you can see your cash balances and fund balances in a pie chart, and then the total cash balances and fund balances underneath that. And again, the water district's net position or fund balance really doesn't apply as much, because what you're looking for there is cash flow. And then on page 9, you can see the property tax rates and the group weighted average, and then the collection percentages along with the group weighted average. And then on page 10, you see the debt by function, if you will. I will give a plug here for the finance officer. There was a new standard that came out in the current year that was applicable first year 6/30/22 called GASB 87. Most accountants hated it. I'm not sure how much good it really does, but nevertheless it had to be done. Most units, be they counties or municipalities that we do, and as a firm we do way over 100 of them, has some type of finding because they didn't budget it properly. And what it does, it basically takes long-term leases both to and from the county and capitalizes it as an asset and shows it as a debt. But you do have to do some budget amendments. You did it, so there were no findings to have to reply to the LGC, et cetera. So kudos to your staff for that. And then on page 11, you see a breakdown of general fund revenue with 56% being ad valorem taxes, and intergovernmental revenue being 19.17, and other taxes and license being 19.78. On the bottom of that page, you see the breakdown by percentage, and it might be slightly skewed because of ARPA expenses there. But with that, I can back up and say this. The main thing you do hire us to do is issue an opinion on the financial statements. We issue an unmodified report, which is a quote-unquote clean report. I told you about the only findings were technical findings with no money involved, no financial findings whatsoever. You can see the positive trends in fund balance, et cetera. So it's a good report, good opinion. I'm happy to answer any questions you got of me. But I'm also happy tonight, but also happy to answer any time you got questions. Always feel free to call our office. If I happen not to be out, tell them to give you my cell phone number, and I'll get you an answer to your question.
You've heard the comments and the excellent report. Questions? Any comments? Anita?
Well done.
Yeah, I'll just make a couple comments. First, I want to thank Mr. Thompson and his staff. I think they do a really thorough job in testing our work, sampling, and doing a really thorough review. The other comment I'd like to make is to let everyone know that this was a summary presentation this evening, very quick, very broad summary information. There was a deep dive done at our Finance Committee meeting. Our meeting lasted about 2.5 hours back in December, mid-December. Chairman, you sit on that committee as well as Commissioner Langley and Rep. Holes. So they got a deep dive on the audit. If any of the other remaining commissioners would like more detail on the audit, I'm available at any time. Thank you.
Anything else? Brian?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Thompson, if you could, for the board, could you explain, or would you answer the question, are there standards by which you and your auditors are bound to comply with?
Yes, sir, there are. And every 3 years we go through a peer review process because of and in addition to that, because of the number of audits we do about 27 counties. I think it's the total number between school districts, COGS, sanitary districts, municipalities. We do about 150 plus. We usually get a visit from the state auditor to do a quality review on an audit. So They review our work and determine whether it's good or bad or comments, et cetera.
So in all of those clients that you work for, and I listed over 100, you said 150, your auditors don't have the arbitrarily decision to make about what they audit, what they don't audit in those. They audit everybody the same and to the same high standard.
Yes is the broad answer. If we have a unit that has a history of a certain issue, we have to delve deeper into that specific issue than we might not on another issue, client. But in general, there is a standard for everything, and then if there's a client that has had a history of issues somewhere, we have to address that issue more thoroughly.
Thank you. The reason I wanted that to be clear to the board, there was an expression, there was a concern raised by a member of the board previously in open session that that there wasn't a rigorous standard by which this occurred, and that these were in fact soft audits that were just done to make bureaucrats feel good about themselves. And what I want to do is not me, but I'd like for you to answer the question for the public in Beaufort County, that they should feel comfortable that the work that we're doing financially is above board, correct, and the way it's supposed to be done in North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
At this point in the process, has the local government commission approved the audit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You might want to just very briefly touch on that until they approve it, there still may be questions on their part, but it has been approved.
It has been approved. Was approved, I believe, probably it was submitted, I think, on November 28th or 9th. It took them 2 or 3 weeks. So before Christmas, about the third week of December, the LGC approved our audit. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Did you say that, I think it's this GASB 682, is that was this
GASB 87.
87?
Yes, sir.
Every county has to do that. Did the local government say that every county has to use that program?
Correct. Every county, municipality, school, everybody in the nation has to deal with that.
Okay, so it's nothing that Beaufort County has done out of the ordinary.
No, sir. It's a nationwide standard.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just make a statement about that. Actually, I think he was complimenting us on that because most units had findings related to their leases. However, I'm going to give y'all a plug because I asked you for some software that would help me manage that new GASB pronouncement. It was called Debt Book. That would help us stay in compliance, and it did its job. So for the 5 of you that voted for that, thank you very much. I wouldn't have been able to do it without it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We are, David, is your mic?
It's not working.
Oh, okay. We're down to the public comment. Dawn?
Happy New Year, Commissioners. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. My name is Dawn Brinson Slan. I watched last month's meeting live online because I was not able to attend in person, but modern technology is a wonderful thing in that it allows those things spoken and recorded to live forever. While I listened to the live meeting, I utilized this modern technology to replay comments from a couple of commissioners several times just to make sure I heard it correctly and within the context of the discussion. The agenda item was Task Force for Workforce Affordable Housing, and the discussion was regarding the creation of a task force to discuss affordable housing in Beaufort County and to help us to ensure that we do not continue to lose citizens to other counties due to lack of affordable housing. While the discussion was hijacked, as it is most months, by certain commissioners bloviating, the outcome provided concrete insight into why some people want the role of county commissioner. It is clear that Beaufort County needs affordable housing of all kinds, and most of you realize that this has been the case for some time. With the potential for new industries and jobs coming to Beaufort County to support the plans for the Washington Warren Airport, it is critical for the issue of housing to be addressed. And while this may bring new people and families to Beaufort County, there's an even bigger plus of being able to offer those that were born and raised here and those with children already living here options for housing. It's not just about single-family homes, but about multifamily homes and having options to offer them if we want them to stay in Beaufort County. All of this represents more opportunity for Beaufort County to retain the younger generation while providing vocational options and opportunity and avoiding a bleak future that was highlighted regarding communities without resources to support the housing needs. Yet one commissioner said, and I quote, "I'm not sure having a bleak future as you define it is a bad thing. For me, bringing a lot of people to Beaufort County is not really one of those things I wanted to do, because if I'd wanted to live where there were a lot of people, I wouldn't have lived in Beaufort County to begin with," end quote. Another one then diverted the comments to belaboring his disdain for the current national administration while unsuccessfully and very loosely relating all of that back to saying that growth can happen through spillover. The agenda item was simply to request agreement in putting a task force together for exploration. Instead, we were able to hear out of their mouths that they do not want anything to retain people here in Beaufort County, and they absolutely do not want growth. Let's be clear. The cost of goods and services will most likely not decrease in the years to come. Therefore, the dwindling number of citizens in Beaufort County will be strapped with paying more taxes and more for those goods and services if we don't retain those that can make a place for those that left to come back. While the national situation undoubtedly impacts everyone at the local level, there is so much more that could be explored and could potentially happen if those set up there with their personal agendas could raise their heads to see how they could help. Beaufort County might be small in population, but it's rich with resources and opportunities. More than that, it can be a place that generations could stay and raise their families and watch their children and grandchildren grow and prosper. Your party affiliation may be what got you here, but the people of Beaufort County is who you work for, and protecting the future of this county is what you should be doing. Thank you to the commissioners that understand that and are willing to put their personal agendas and pontificating rants aside to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the legislative updates, and I do not see Senator Perry or Representative Kidwell. I guess they're in Raleigh. We're down to items for consent. We need to pull item number 10. The person withdrew their application to be on the Workforce Development Board. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed. Okay, we're down to items for decision. The Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Hammonds, welcome to your first meeting.
It is my first meeting.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Commissioner, Chair. Appreciate everybody's help through the last 4 weeks and beginning my 5th week. And already up here on a major request, and here we are. I hope each one of you have the abstract in front of you that explains my reason here tonight. And with that, there should be a organizational chart that you have before you that shows the organizational chart of the Sheriff's Office.
I don't have that.
Okay, that's the pay plan. If you'll work with me then on the explanation of the organizational chart, if you don't mind, it would help me explain the chain of command and how it, I did not come with it.
I don't think I have a copy by then.
My apologies.
Hey, we don't have in the book. The only thing I'd be interested in is what was the previous title
Okay.
and what they're being promoted to.
So what we have is, when I stepped in the office in December 6th, I had a vacancy of chief deputy that I had to fill. So I had to make a decision to either go outside and search or keep a continuity of leadership that I felt safe and felt comfortable with. And I made a very decisive choice, choosing my new chief deputy. He's here tonight, Chief Hickman. So with that, what I did is I looked at the pay scale that was authorized in previous administration, how to come up to a desired salary. And the previous chief of deputy went out with a approved salary of
$99,400. And that was based under the approved scale. And I looked at what could have brought that $99,400. And I looked at his years and experience and the quality of service that would have authorized that or brought that. But what I did, I submitted the salary adjustment that I'm requesting tonight in front of you, the $104,495. That comes with 19 years of additional experience, who has actually led in environments of state decisions, state disastrous decision, and who was already in command capacity here at Sheriff's Office, who can maintain that continuity of care here. So I ask for approval on that, on Chief Deputy Timothy Hickman. Below that, in the middle, if you go to the third option, is David Richards. David Richards was an employee in the Special Operations Unit who was he was a deputy working overtime based on the needs of the Special Operations unit that he was in. So I went back out of fairness. I said, let me see what his previous 3 years' salary was. And then I was going to promote him anyway because we had a vacancy in our support service who handles all of our weapons, cars, all the uniform ordering, the logistics of the 96 personnel. And I saw a need to pay him commensurate to the sergeant's salary. And before you see that, which, if I quote this correctly, is at the midpoint or just below the midpoint. And then that's out of the sheriff's budget. The Jeremy Hewitt budget comes out of the same budget, which when I promoted chief deputy from major, that vacancy occurred. So that salary stayed the same, so there was no change in our budget representing that. All right, any questions with that presentation?
So, Mr. Chairman, just for the board, as you recall, there are under the personnel policy, there are certain items in which the board authorizes through that personnel policy the county manager to make certain decisions relating to hiring and salaries. Anything that is at the mid-grade or above has to come to the board for approval, so that is why you see these three. There have been changes within the sheriff's office that were within the purview of the sheriff to make and within the authority under the personnel policy for me to make. That means they were below the midpoint. Obviously, he did some reshuffling. To the sheriff's credit, he actually did give me we had a meeting. We haven't had a meeting like that ever, I think. Well, this was the first time we've met on that. But we sat down with his HR staff and with our HR staff, and we went through everything. We looked at all of it. We looked at the numbers, and we made those changes based on his recommendations and what he'd like to do within his organization. These are the outstanding ones that I could not approve that have to come to the board for approval, and that's why he's here tonight to make that request of you. At our meeting, you did give me an org chart, and I apologize. I assumed it was going to be in the agenda item that was put together, but that's okay. They're new to the agenda management system as well, so there's some things that'll pick up as they get their feet wet and understand the use of that. So just wanted to lay that out, but that's where you are with this.
Well, the two that I have some concern about is the first one you have there is an 18.3% increase. If it matched the chief deputy that was leaving, it's a 12.7% increase.
I looked at that percentage, and when that vacancy created, then I already knew my choice would have, at the minimum, would have met that criteria. All I did was went in and used the system that was in place for the years of service that he brought.
Is the responsibilities going to be different than the previous one?
Absolutely. That's where the that's where the org chart would have helped me to give you a visual illustration by operating on a 24/7, as we always know that that's our case. Our responsibility is, and actually in the previous, we probably could have justified the same thing if we'd had a structured org chart to demonstrate it.
But there is additional responsibility.
Yes, sir.
The third one, that one is a 16.4% increase?
No, sir, you're looking at the Richards?
Yes.
Yeah, no, sir. Well, here's the way, he's either going to get it payment now or payment later. So he was on a base pay. I took 3 years of overtime.
Okay.
So he was making it anyway.
Is he going to be exempt from overtime in this new position?
No, sir. But he got promoted to a responsibility. His duties increased because he's now supervising personnel.
Okay. But he still was eligible for overtime?
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify on that too as well, and this happened before I got here, so it's been at least 7 years. The Board of Commissioners, my understanding, approved, there are only 2 people in the sheriff's office that are exempt. That's the sheriff and the chief deputy.
Okay.
Everybody below the chief deputy is not exempt and is paid overtime, and that was by action of this board.
Okay. Other questions?
Well, I have an observation. I don't understand why we put together and do all of these studies and pay these consultants all this money, and they come in and tell us that these are the steps and these are the midpoints and this is what people should be paid. And then when we start breaking that system and stepping outside of that system, what about the other 300 employees that work for Beaufort County? Are they entitled to the same kind of consideration? And I really don't think they're going to get it here. I don't understand why we can't stay inside of what has been set up.
Yeah, if I may comment, I did stay within the structured system that was in place. I intentionally stayed within that just to eliminate that perception, because I don't want to, my first presentation would not be to come outside of boundaries. So I've already gone through the parameters. I'm within them, well within them. All we did was just adjust to the vacancies, and really all you're seeing is filling those gaps that were there.
Well, overtime has been something in the sheriff's department that has been horrible, not for the last 4 or 5 years that I've been looking at it. As much as 25, 50, and in the case of one employee, I think 70% of their base pay was paid out again to them in overtime. What are you going to do to control overtime?
I will continue to measure that and manage it, supervise it, and I'll take note of that and go back and look at it.
How is overtime approved in the sheriff's department?
That's through our manager, our chief deputy, and the administrative clerk.
But who signs off in authorizing overtime? When overtime needs to be authorized, who is the person that they go to and say, you need to authorize this overtime?
Going back to that, the chief deputy will, as the operational manager, and I will look at it once he's brought that to me. And if the work's already needed to be done, then we're going to make the adjustments necessary. I'm not just giving you a political answer. I'm just going to tell you, I will go in and I'll monitor it and handle it like I would my own personal finance.
Usually the immediate supervisor has to sign off on overtime, and then his supervisor signs off on overtime. Do you have a system like that?
Well, overtime is a management item because there's still a job that's got to be completed through that week, through that bi-weekly period. So we're going to manage it, and that first line supervisor will actually be very active in it, yes.
Other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Booth.
You stated that on your chief deputy things have changed. You got more responsibilities. In Beaufort County, we got a decline in population. And what is the difference in what he'll be doing and what Charlie was doing?
Charlie being the past chief of deputy, I can't answer that, what he was doing, Commissioner. I don't mean to be, but I've gone through each of those tasks and looked at what this organizational chart presents.
And I'm not being facetious.
I get you.
But you said he was going to be doing things, he had more responsibilities. What are they?
So in the divisional, patrol division, he's managing a 24/7 training. I mean, it's just each of those divisions are broke down into subdivisions of training, training scheduling, mandated training from crimes, training standard, in-service training, and then going to the detention training, mandated training. We've got a drone system now that goes into a search and rescue coordinator that coordinates with our county emergency management team. That is a coordination of the drone unit. We'll be managing the drug unit that's with the K9 assets. We'll be managing I wish I brought that org chart myself. But just breaking it down into each of those sub-departments within those divisions. There's more accountability from what I walked in. After I've created a track-in devices for each of these, I'll give you a better answer on a future date of exactly how those responsibilities reflect. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with Sheriff Hammonds, I think it might be beneficial I have a copy of the pay plan, and I can give you the salary ranges for each of these three positions, if that helps. I think it would be helpful. So, for example, for Chief Deputy, that is a pay grade 78, and the range, the minimum, is $76,123. And the max is $115,997. And so he's saying that Hickman has 37 years experience, and he wants to put him within that range I just gave you at $104,495. And then for the major position, that is a pay grade 76, and the minimum for that pay grade is $69,708, and the maximum is $106,223, and he wants to put this person for major at $88,896. And then I believe Richards is proposed to be a first sergeant. No, a sergeant, sorry. I'm not very good with ranks.
You're fine.
Okay. So for the sergeant position, that is a pay grade 68, and that pay range is from $49,019 to $74,696, and he wants to pay him $65,862.
So to add just a little bit to that, when we look at from the county side, not the sheriff's office side, when we're looking at employees and when we hire employees, we look at education and experience based on where we want to place them in the pay range, right? Under those same conditions that they have to make at least minimum, they can't go above midpoint, right? And we look at what their qualifications are, we bounce that through the HR director, we look at where we are with our staffing currently, because what we don't want to do is call internal issues, have somebody who comes in who has less experience and paid more than somebody who doesn't. So we look at all those internal equity issues. For the sheriff's office, they actually have, and the sheriff mentioned that, theirs isn't arbitrary either. They look at education and they look at years of experience, and they have a multiplier in which they come up with that number. So it's not just an arbitrary number. And I think you said that. I just wanted that to be clear, that we have our way of doing it on our side, looking at it, and they have their way of doing it, and theirs is based on education and years of law enforcement experience. So
I guess the question that, and Dolores, she has left, this recommendation is within our policy.
the the
As it relates
policy-
to mid-range,
Yes,
whatever.
the policy is that it has to come to the board for approval, because it's above midpoint. Under your personnel policy, I, as the county manager, with supporting documentation from the department head, can bring somebody in up to midpoint. But once we hit midpoint in anybody, it's got to come to the Board of Commissioners for approval. And that's whether it's an initial hire or if it's a promotion or a transfer or things like that. So that's why these three are coming to you, because based on, and it's mostly, I think, based on years of experience.
That's correct.
That's driven that number higher. It's above midpoint, so it has to come to the board for your approval, for your discussion and approval.
Randy?
It seems like the sheriff's numbers are fair, but what could really blow out of proportion quickly is the overtime. And how can we monitor that? And would we be able to, is it a monthly figure, a quarterly figure?
We do, and, starting in my fifth week, that come up in talks, and I know that we do our internal audits and ensure that that supervisor is in place to manage that personnel day by day. So yes, that it's monitored and audited by higher management. Even at the end of the shift, we're notified of that overtime or of that incident that carried them overtime. So it is monitored and it is supervised.
Would it be out of the question for us to change our policy to include more people that would not, qualify for overtime?
I highly don't recommend that, of course. Not because it benefits me but I'll just tell you on the front side that the reason we're paying overtime is because recruiting and retention nationally, state, locally, is creating that calls for overtime. And I use the word most, if y'all will accept that. I find that most of our overtime is coming from, I came out at 4 o'clock the other morning and we had a critical incident that occurred at 4:45, shift goes off at 6. Well, I've got 2, I believe 3 would carry over to, well, that would have cost us 7 hours overtime just on that one incident. Not on that incident, I took a command decision to call in the oncoming shift to be able to control, that morning. So I saw at least 9 hours overtime just in that one incident. We're going to manage it. You have my word, we're going to manage it. And I just, that's all I can give you, it will be managed.
Commissioner Booth?
Your overtime, I understand it very well. And it's hard for you to manage overtime. If you got a B&E, you can't stop a guy from investigating this B&E and bring it in to get somebody else finished because of changes evidence.
Yes.
So that's one thing you can't do.
Yes.
Because you lose every case that you ever had. So that's not a problem for the overtime. But the question you asked, the gentleman that you're promoting, you say he was doing the work anyway. And so he was getting the overtime anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So when you promote him, what's going to keep him from getting overtime that he was getting paid for to do anyway?
Well, now that he's in I call him, he's at the office environment doing administrative work. Mm-hmm. His overtime can be controlled at a greater level. Mm-hmm. Before he was in a special operations where that was just.
And I don't want to control your overtime. I wouldn't vote to control your overtime because of what I forestated. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion.
You can do them bundled at one time.
We can do them I would prefer that if we got any changes, we try to do all three of them at the same time. But I mean, whatever it takes.
Let's just do them all.
I mean,
The only problem I have is I understand the years of experience. And that's the only one that I have heartburn with. I mean, that's how many employees do you have in the county that's almost maxed out? The other two, I will support that recommendation.
May I add one thing, Commissioner?
Yes.
the increase was $5,095 from the vacancy when that chief deputy departed. And what I'm bringing in this was a difference of $5,000 annually.
I think the past chief deputy definitely was making 99,000.
That's correct.
And this was going from 99 to 104.
Well, 99,400 to 5,000, I mean, 104,449. That's right. So,
Yeah. Well, that's the only one I have a problem with. And the other ones I can understand. And I'm not trying to micromanage your department, but what I want to do is be fair to the other 300 employees. We got employees every day can come in here and say they got qualifications that we could reclassify them. I wish we could, but we can't afford it.
all right, good.
I'm going to make a motion, and I want you to, and this is for all three, but I want you to understand on the first one, my recommendation is matching the previous one, which is 99,500, and the second one as recommended, and the third one, my number there is 62,100, and I'll make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second that.
How about the, Mr. Hewitt?
I believe in that one as is. What I'm looking at, Stan, is a percentage increase. The first one, based on the recommendation, was 18.3, the second was 9.8, and the last one was 16.4. And my recommendation on the third one brings that one to 9.8, under 10.
On Mr. Hewitt, he could get overtime, he could be making more than chief deputy pretty quick. I could go with what you're saying, providing we might hit off all of them a little bit, reduce all of them to a degree, because it just doesn't seem like it'd be fair to do so and not lower the guy in the middle with less experience than the top and the bottom.
Well, the second, I was trying to keep it under 10%, and the second one, the recommendation is 9.8% increase.
I get that, but I just think there's a reason why there's a reason why the sheriff did what he did. He has what he feels is a sound reason for using these increments as he prescribed. I'm just saying, I think we, maybe not to the degree we lower the top and the bottom, but do lower the guy in the middle by maybe a couple of thousand.
Well,
and I think that might be easier to explain to other employees.
We got a motion and a second, so do you want to make an amendment on the middle?
Yeah, I would like to make an amendment to lower the middle, Mr. Hewitt, to $88,800. Let's just round it up to $900.
Well,
to $86,900.
I mean, the middle one, that's right on, you're not changing that.
Well, $86,900. $86,900, yes.
Okay, is there a second to the amendment? It dies. Okay. Any other discussion before we take a vote?
Yes, I have something to say. I can't support this because we're breaking the midpoint. I admit it's a new organization. I understand where the sheriff is going. He wants his employees to be well paid, but it's breaking the midpoint. I'm thinking about all the other employees in the county with a lot more education and a lot more training than what these guys have that are not going to be privy to the same kind of treatment. So I'm not going to support breaking the midpoint.
You're about open for any kind of argument here.
All right, let's see if we got any. Well, we've got a motion and we've got a second, so we're fairly close to taking a vote.
But I'm afraid you're not looking at you're comparing our work description to what other non-gun toting law enforcement 24/7 operation. And I just bear in mind I gave it I gave this a very restrictive salary based on what I knew that our new responsibilities would be.
I can understand that, but my problem is the increase amount.
That percentage
You
is
look at
only,
the percentage.
that percentage only increased because there was a vacancy, not because that individual got that kind of increase. Actually, Hickman only got a 5% increase, that position, not necessarily Hickman. Hickman is the individual in that position. That position only gained a 5% increase, not I think 12. Because that position was approved at 99.4. And I'm only gaining a 5% increase, sir. And the same with Hewitt, only gaining a 10% increase. And the only reason David Richards' increase would occur is because we just moved him from one duty position, elevated, and that was at my discretion because we had his quality of life, if I can use that, was based on what he had known, what he'd been living off of. So I just went in and did a fair assessment on 3 years. And that's how I arrived at this number. So if you'll take that consideration instead of the individual percentage.
Any other?
Anita, the range that you gave us, was that because of the result of the study or the state?
The study.
We did implement a pay plan in, I guess it was 2021, and then we got a 5% COLA on July 1st, 2022. So this is our most recent pay plan numbers.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Those opposed?
I'd like to say one thing.
Yes.
The 99,000 for the chief deputy, that
Yes.
was a big jump when it happened about a year and a half ago. And it was a huge jump, and a lot of the commissioners didn't vote for it. So just to match it right now is kind of a big jump for some of us.
Okay. I appreciate your saying that.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to go to the next item as it relates to
So if I may ask, so we agreed at 99, what?
99.5.
So, Mr. Chairman, the question was, what was the chief deputy making when the last chief deputy making? The last chief deputy was making 99,576.
Yeah, but my motion was 99.5.
Okay.
My motion was 99.5, and for the third one, it was 62,100.
And 86.9 for the middle position.
Yes, the same as in the spreadsheet. Yeah, it stays there. The next item is a special salary minimum rate request for communication.
Thank you again, Commissioner, so this item for decision is the base rate, the hiring rate of our telecommunicators. This is obviously a need that is almost a economical need here. Our starting rate is $34,000 for and I was even reading the job description in here, and I bet I've got 12 plus hours in the last 10 days in there just so I could come explain to you. But $34,300 equates to $16.49 an hour. To do what that office and that division does, I'm requesting the $40,000 starting rate and then following the schedule that you see on your page 2, I believe, or your schedule. And now, even what I'm requesting is a rate that will attract quality and get me the personnel who's willing to sit in that environment for 12-hour shifts. And if you'll take the time sometime to come sit in that environment, 12-hour shift, I witnessed a telecommunicator who went through a CPR, a life-saving measure, who had, and on the other end of the line, the wife lost that spouse to that anyway. But That's just to say what type of environment that employee has to be endured to. And I did some other questions that even the risk of some of these will go out in a PTSD type environment, so to find a quality person who we vet and try to identify as the right fit for that type of work, we have to offer them something they can live with. I find that not just in our office, but in other offices, many of these are even a single family member who's trying to bring this together, and so I'd like for you to consider that. So I'm asking for the $40,000 starting, stay on the same plan of going for promotion, and that will be at $19.23 per hour, which is only $5,700 per annual.
Okay, Commissioner Booth?
Job well done. How many employees you have in telecommunications now?
At the current, yes, ma'am.
16. How many of them now make $40,000?
I've got 6 that do not. Well, we just hired another one today, so.
So for the board's perspective, you'll remember back on 4/6/22, you did this exact same thing with deputies. You took them to a minimum special hiring rate of 42,000. So the sheriff's asking you to do that for his telecommunicators. And personnel policy that you have requires that the people who are already there, as you adjust up to a minimum, you adjust the people who are currently there who are not above that so that they're above that. You're required to do that. You did that with the deputies. He's showing you the remaining folks there, and they have a matrix you can see at the bottom that shows how they came up with that number. So that's to make sure there's pay equity within the range.
But let me finish. The ones that's not making $40,000 now, they will be brought up to $40,000.
That's correct.
That's the ones on the list.
Well, I'm pleased with that.
And then the future we can go out and advertise 40,000 starting pay.
Okay. Now, I'm pleased with that.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
Is there such a thing as overtime with telecommunicators?
There is, and I was about to reference Ms. Aaron, but there is. I know there is.
Entertain a motion to approve the recommendation. Okay, is there a second? Okay, any further discussion?
I have further discussion. I don't know why we do a pay plan. I think we just need we're trashing the pay plan. We go through all this hoopla about how important it is and how scientific it is and how comparable to other operations and other places and other people it is. And then when somebody comes in and asks for more money, we just give it to them. We've always done that. We have trashed the pay plan. It means nothing so far as benefiting our other 300 employees, because look, over the last couple of years, we've adjusted several up. This, you got to do this, you got to do that. You guys need to think about what's going to happen in the future, because we have worked the pay plan probably to the point that we need another pay plan study, because what you're doing is very political, and I'm concerned about the other 300 employees.
Brian?
Yes, sir. So I would agree with Commissioner Richardson. We do need to do another pay plan. The pay plan that the board did was done in 2017. It was not implemented until 2021, and it wasn't even fully implemented at that time. So I would agree 100% with Commissioner Richardson. We need to do another pay plan, because we are in competition across. There's only a certain number of folks that we're after, and we're competing with every other local government, and we need to stay competitive. So I appreciate that opportunity to share that.
I mean, we compete with the counties around us for these same employees.
We sure are.
And
it's our management and the perception of our office is why they come to us.
Okay.
I'd like to say one thing about that, though. The job they do is more important than most of our other employees. I mean, since the these guys, ever since the to defund our law enforcement across the nation and certain communities started, it created a disposition of some areas of law enforcement, and they're moving to other areas, creating a market that's completely out of whack. So what's happening is law enforcement professionals are able to demand more money and work where they want to work, where they will be protected by the politicians like here. So I know that sounds kind of complicated for some of you, but it is 100% true. It's hard to get people. You've got to pay for them, even though this is a better place for them to work and live because they will be protected. So while I don't want to think we've got to go start paying our employees more. I think we have too many employees as we have right now, and all of them are paid well enough, if not too much, some of them. But those guys right there are the most important employees we have. They protect us, and their life is on the line every time they go out. No other employee in Beaufort County that works for Beaufort County has the same measure of danger. So,
He's talking about 911.
yeah, I know, but I'm talking about all those folks that work down there.
Well, I think he is talking about our whole office.
Yeah, the whole office is just, the jail, everybody, it's a totally different construct than our other employees. So I don't want us to get into a new pay plan.
How do you train telecommunicators? Do you do it yourself, or is there somewhere that
No, sir, we've got a FTO program that starts on the job training. And once an academy does open up, then if that luxury is there, we'll use it, but they're going to train them on the job, and they're going to work, and that's what the past is showing.
Yeah, it's probably a lot like combat. You sit there long hours and nothing, and then all of a sudden, it all comes at one time.
I have sat in there and watched, I'd really not say his first name, but telecommunicator jump right in from an idle moment to a CPR, and I'm telling you, and I read the description here, and working multiple radios, working fire, chase, CPR was going on at the same time. And their mind has to go from, I'm taking somebody right off the street as a recruit and put them in that environment. It just takes a training, and it takes a discipline. Not everybody's cut out for that. The room's dark. That's enough.
Okay, let's vote. We've got a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. All those in favor of raising the minimum to $40,000, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Okay. Now we're down to revised vehicle purchase order. I'm sorry.
Real quick, I'm assuming that motion included the adjustment of the existing personnel based on policy that had to come up as well.
It was based on the recommendation, which is those that are in.
Yeah, I just want to make sure because you just said the 40, but.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next item, are you going to handle that, or
I've got this.
Chief Deputy Hickman? Okay.
All right, thank you, Commissioner.
Welcome.
Good evening, Board.
Welcome.
How are you? I've got a revised purchase order for replacement of vehicles. I think originally Chief Rose had came before the board with a PO for 8 Durangos. During that time, the Dodge Chargers were looking at being phased out. But since that time, we were able to secure Chargers that are going to continue to be made, and the price is going to be less than what was originally requested. On the Durangos, the total would have been $300,123.83 for the 8 of the Durangos. The Chargers, they're only $36,949 for each unit, which made a total of $288,795.92 for a savings of $44,327.92. So it's a revision from the original purchase order. So the purchase order total is $288,795.92.
Okay. Entertain,
Those are 2023.
entertain a motion
Well,
to,
I have some questions before we get to a motion.
okay?
When did we get our last order of new automobiles?
Commissioner, I'm not sure. It was 2 years ago.
2 years? You sure?
Yes.
About a year ago, we had an overlap on these things and carried them over. Forward 2 years just doesn't sound right.
It was 2 budget years. They may have carried over to the next year, but we bought radios last year instead of vehicles. We made that change. Remember, I think you were the one that actually made that motion to do that.
So I guess, are you saying delivery? Are you saying delivery or are you saying purchase? Because
Delivery. When was delivery of the last?
I think they just got delivery of some of them, but they were purchased 2 years ago.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. The average age of this fleet has been, the average age was 120,000 miles the last time we had numbers on this, and this will come up again in the budget when we get the list of your fleet with the mileage of the cars in the fleet. So, how new is our fleet is one of the questions we need to ask ourselves in approving this. And the second question I have is, what is the additional cost in outfitting these vehicles with radios and all that electronic stuff?
Each car would be an additional $8,411.72.
And that's
For
with-
8 vehicles, that'd be another $67,293.76.
And that's new gear, right?
Yes, sir.
What happens to the old gear?
It's new equipment other than the Viper radio we currently have and the in-car cameras. So
Where does the old equipment go?
when we have it stripped, it's held by our installer, and when the new vehicles go to have this new equipment installed on them, they put the equipment that was taken off the old car in it. Only the radio and the in-car cameras, everything else is new. Repurposed.
So part of it is new and part of it's old?
Yes, sir. Only the camera and the radio.
The new is $8,000?
Yes, sir.
$8,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
And that is to go, the price is a little bit higher than what it may have been in the past because Sheriff Hammond's wanted to do a bar light on top of their car for more visibility instead of the inside.
Sounds like
blue
he's going
lights.
back home.
Sir. Hey, they do look a lot better. And unless you're working traffic or something, you need to be, a covert vehicle, they work better on the roof.
My idea is to bring the trust to the community.
I hear you. When is the expected delivery date of these vehicles?
Let me see.
Is that a guaranteed delivery date, or is that just a guess that we might have some cars by then?
No, sir, it is. This was put together by someone else. It's not showing a delivery date, but the last time we spoke to them, we were assured that they would be able to get them by like May or June of this year from Wallace, North Carolina.
Any other questions? Got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the purchase order, raise your right hand. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
A question before you guys
Sure.
leave. Somebody asked me what happened to all the cars that were behind Brian's office in that parking lot.
Our storage facility, Clyco, that's where the old VFW used to be.
Okay.
We got them there. The ones that hadn't been surplus yet.
I got you.
And we had to keep a certain number for spares.
I got you.
And we've now changed the name of that to Sheriff's Annex for y'all's
Correct.
future.
All right.
Instead of advertising for Clyco.
Some other company uses that word black code for their tax purposes.
Okay.
That's our annex.
Is Victoria who's going to handle the,
Victoria called in sick, and I think Erin Woolard is the
Okay.
Assistant Director in Communications. She's going to handle the next.
come on up, Aaron.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. The Sheriff's Office 911 Center is requesting to procure an IP logger through a sole source purchase. This will be an add-on to our existing Eventide recorder that is used to record 911 calls and radio traffic. Currently, our center is limited to a certain number of resources that we can record at one time. An IP logger in conjunction with the Motorola AIS will allow us to record and play back as many resources as we deem necessary to ensure we are efficiently completing our task. This also improves our ability to guarantee we are doing everything possible for first responder safety. This purchase will utilize state 911 funds. And this is all in reference to the $91,000 for part of the recorder that we are trying to put in our communications center. In conjunction with the purchase of the IP logger through Carolina Recording Systems, we will also need a procurer, a Motorola AIS. The AIS or archiving interface server allows our radio consoles to communicate with the new IP logger. This piece of equipment is required to ensure connectivity can be made, and this purchase will also use state 911 state 911 funds and discounted in accordance with the NC State Contract 725G.
So Anita, we are using 911 funds.
For most of it, if you look on page 183, you can see of the 91,000, go up to about the very middle of the page, $76,882.31 is being paid with that special revenue funds that we get from the state. And the remaining $14,117.69 is coming out of county, their E911 budget.
How much does that leave in the 911 funds?
Oh, I don't have that number with me.
You can just guess.
I don't want to make a guess. It won't be right. I will guess. I'm going to say close to $500,000, around 500.
Is it in, that's not okay.
That would be in the full report. This was actually my understanding, because I questioned that earlier this evening, to make sure that we were leveraging all the state money first. This purchase was sent to the 911 board, and the only amount eligible was the $76,882. That's why the county's picking up the $14,000 out of the sheriff's communications budget.
Question?
Appreciate you coming. Explain to the significance of this. I mean, I'm fine with it. I just want to know the significance of it.
Of the recorder?
Yes.
So with state law, we have to keep a record of all of our 911 calls on file for 90 days.
90 days.
And we currently have a recorder through the Carolina Recording System.
Yes, ma'am.
And what they're doing is they're just coming to upgrade, to update and upgrade the recorder that we currently have. So that way, if for some reason our deputies do get in a chase, or if they're involved in a wreck or something, the sheriff can come back, or somebody else in our office can come back and ask to listen to the recordings. We can go and pull the recording up, and they can hear all the traffic that involved with it.
Is this the same recording that you keep longer if it's a court case involved in it?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Stan?
Yeah. IP is Internet Protocol. Is that what it is? What does it stand for?
I'm not sure.
Information packets?
I'm not sure.
I mean, is it digital or is it analog?
I wouldn't think anybody's making analog. Can't imagine. It's not analog. So maybe it's information packets or Internet Protocol. I'm just curious as to what that stands for.
All these systems are integrated with other systems.
It is. So this could be phone, this could be text, this could be
Yes, sir.
email, anything.
Through phone, through radio.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Internet Protocol probably.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anything but not the administrative number, but other.
Informational packets are part of the Internet Protocol. I mean, that's the little packages of data that gets sent down the lines. And so it could be one or the other or both.
Yes, sir.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as an example, if you'll, like Anita just pointed out to you on page 183, you see 76,882 was approved by the 911 board. 14,117 was disallowed by the 911 board. This is the same piece of equipment. So I want you to understand that. There's a group sitting in Raleigh on the 911 board who's looking at this and saying, well, we don't think we ought to spend all just 911 money on that. You ought to spend some of your money on it because of something they've determined that doesn't match over. You know, we've talked about that. The call comes in. As soon as you get ready to dispatch the call, 911 money is not allowed to be used for it. So this is a clear example of the same piece of equipment, the 911 board telling you you can't use their money to spend it. That's where the association and boards of commissioners need to work to straighten that out, because that's just wrong.
I'm assuming that they're trying, at some point, they're going to try to get this 500,000 plus or minus that we have.
They are currently, every year they look at our funds and they say, you haven't spent enough of them, so they penalize us. Now, we're working through that to try to make sure that we do as much as we can so we don't get penalized. But there are telecommunication folks, telecommunication industry people who sit on the 911 board, and I can assure you that they want more of that money coming to them than they want money going to local governments. So,
Mr. Chairman, there is a fix for that. I realize with this board it would be very unpopular. Just lower the 911 taxes. We did one time.
that was when you didn't control it. The 911 board controls the...
They've changed the law.
Yeah. Okay, we did get a motion in a second. All those in favor of the purchase order to upgrade the communications recording system, raise your right hand. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Y'all have a nice evening. Brian, you're up on the next item, the abandonment of a road.
Yes, sir. So Attorney Amanda Sassman is here tonight as well. So this is a request. You have a petition from her representing her client, Marie Peden, to permanently abandon and close a portion of former location of Secondary Road 1516, Beaufort County. You'll see in the packet, you have her petition requesting that. You have the resolution that she's asking you to adopt by statute that would allow you to do this. I do need to tell you I got a correction on that. We'll come back to that. You have the statute that tells you how you can close public roads and easements. You have a copy of the map on page 188 that shows the original DOT project and an email from DOT. This was done back in 72. Actually in 62 and then in 71 when they redid the alignment. DOT is not maintaining this. They haven't for a long, long time. The issue that occurred was when Ms. Peden went to try to, her plans are to purchase those two pieces of property and build houses on it. When she went to do that, she couldn't get clear title because when they looked at it, they said, you got an old state easement running through there. The state said it's not ours. We don't have anything to do with it. So it falls to the county. So this is a process under statute by which you've got to publicly declare at this meeting that you intend to hold a public hearing to close that right away and do away with it. So generally that's what it is. The one thing I'll tell you on page 186, down at the portion where the first, now therefore, that would be at 5:30 p.m. on Monday the 6th of February. Would be your next meeting. And we would advertise this in the paper by statute, and then you'd hold a public hearing to hear anybody who would say, no, I don't want you to abandon that. I don't think you're going to hear from anybody. Nobody knows anything about it. And then you can take action by statute to abandon that road and allow there to be clean title coming with this piece of property. And her attorney is here tonight to answer any questions.
So there's one public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of... Okay. Entertain a motion to move forward. Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions? All right. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian, you've got the next one.
I do, yes, sir. This is the North Carolina Resilient Coastal Communities Grant. We talked about this a couple of times. This is the third phase of the program. It's 100% funded under the grant, no county money involved. You started back in July of 22 with this grant from the state. What this does is it pays for the engineering design for the low-cost impact development site, demonstration site at the community college and the related educational materials. RK&K is the group that was selected and approved by the grant organization to do this work, and they're recommending you need to approve the contract since it will flow through us, but there is no county money involved in it.
And this project has taken place at the community college.
Yes, sir. As you recall, we started out under the Resilient Coastal Communities Program, where they did, the first phase was to look at what could be done for coastal communities to be more resilient. They did listening sessions, they did public hearings, those things. The second piece was to develop different aspects of what you could do, and of course it was very limited in funds. And this was the third piece, is where they actually approved that in the last grant, to say they wanted to do a demonstration site so that educational components could be shared with the public, to say, here are things that you could do with your property to make it more resilient when there's flooding and when there's bad issues, so that you don't get hit bad and you're able to recover quickly.
Mr. Richards.
Okay, these engineers are going to design something under this contract. Who's going to pay for building what they design?
That would be a future grant under the RCC program. If
they're going to pay for it.
Well, yeah, if it goes, what they'll do is they'll design it, they'll look at the numbers, and then there's a second phase of this. I mean, we don't have to do anything. There's no commitment on our part to say we will build it. The next part of the grant is for them to lay some money out there to do that.
Well, this is another one of those environmental programs that has a really big question mark on its value.
I entertain a motion. Got a motion to approve the grant. Is there a second?
You're not approving the grant, you're approving the contract.
I'm sorry, the contract. Is there a second? I'll second that. All those in favor of the contract approving it, raise your right hand. Those opposed? All right, we're down to our break, so we'll take a break and we'll be back in 10 to 15 minutes. From our break, we're down to Commissioner Richardson. Your first item is the budget process request.
What page is that?
202. 202.
202. Are we skipping your item?
Yeah, I withdrew that.
All right. 202. Oh, okay, this has to do with the budget? There are things that go on in the budget process. There are things that go on in government. Government is too big for anybody to watch. Time was everybody in the county could see what was going on at the courthouse. Can't do that anymore. Can't even begin to see what's going on. There are a lot of operations and processes and grants and hired people and staff and things that commissioners don't even know about that go on. The purpose of this request on the budget is that we make sure that that information is included in the budget process and that we get it in our budget package so that we have an idea about these things. And my first item is a list with a very brief explanation of individual grants administered by the department with full-time equivalent employees applied to the grant. And number two, and when the grant expires and the amount of grant and the amount of grant money remaining.
So, Commissioner, just to be clear, you're looking to see if we are employing full-time employees with grant money.
Well, are we doing that? And just the fact, what are the grants?
Right, okay. I understand, and that's easy for us to do. The majority of the folks that we have under grant stuff, we do them in time limited, or, I understand your concern. Your concern is that we would have an FTE that we put in place under a grant that we never got rid of when the grant went away.
Well, yeah, that and the knowledge of the grants and the amount of work and effort that's going into them.
Sure.
Number two, a list by name of all persons housed by the department, whether on county property or not. What this really means is we are housing grant individuals who are not on the county payroll in some locations. We need to know about those.
Okay, so this is just grant folks, not just all county employees. You want to know the grant people, whether they're in our place or whether they're like at a different location.
People that, yeah, the people that we're housing that are not on the county payroll is really probably the summary statement that it comes down to. Because we loan office space to people, commissioners are not always aware of what organizations that we're loaning office space to. So we need that. Number 3, a list of outside agencies with which the department cooperates, exchange information with, or provides services to. And that's can go all over the place.
I don't really know how to do that because we interact with anybody and everybody.
I know, and but I'm more interested in cooperative agreements that we are using employees to service.
Okay.
Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Okay.
A list of employees whose salary is paid wholly or in part by Beaufort County revenue. Now, this probably apply to the school board more than anything else because there are a lot of county employees out there. There are a lot of state employees. There are some shared employees. There's some federally paid employees. So who are all these people? And I'll be asking for a school budget in more detail in that insofar as the numbers of people that are involved. But that applies to any agency, not just the school board, but it's mostly aimed at school board. A list of budget-approved items or purchase orders that may not be filled this fiscal year. A list of budget-approved items that are not intended to be filled this year and may be carried over to the 23-24 budget year. Just make a list. They know what these are.
Honestly, we don't. Don't necessarily. Let me give you an example that came up tonight. So Chief Deputy Hickman is going to order vehicles. You approved the purchase order tonight. He said he hopes to get them in May or June. We'll be providing you with budget information in April, and I'm not going to know for sure if we get those vehicles in May and June and I'm able to pay for them, or if they're going to carry over to the next year.
No, the request doesn't go to when you write a check. The request goes to when the purchase order is issued. That's the key.
Well, now that's easy if you want them when the purchase order's issued, but generally that's not what causes our issue when we're carrying over purchase orders.
But if you have items that purchase orders have been issued for, defined as I'm requesting, then I'm going to know what has not been satisfied, what may be satisfied, and what is not going to be satisfied at all.
So I think we can do what you're asking for. The question is, are there any that we, like in your notes said, are there any purchase orders that are intended not to be filled this year? We actually intend to fill every one of those POs every year when we have them issued. There are circumstances in which sometimes we can't, like they get extended out or things, but we can certainly try to give you, I tell you what we can do, is very, well, easy for us, I think, is we'll give you a hard date, say June 1, and provide that to the board to say, these purchase orders have not been completed. Because we can pull that out of our system.
Yeah.
Correct.
Open purchase orders, open orders.
Yeah.
All companies do it.
And they may close before the end of the year, but as of that date certain, they haven't.
Right.
They may close by the end of
But
the year.
a purchase order has been issued.
Right. Okay.
You want to make a motion?
Well, will be a motion when I finish, and I got one more item and I'll be done.
Oh, that's right.
A summary of the 2023 school capital budget items to be completed during the 22-23 budget year, and a list of 22-23 budget capital items that will not be completed. Well, one of my problems is that this capital budget is all over the place, and it's a total moving target. At one time, we had very firm control of the capital budget, and we have lost that control with the Republican administration on this board because they didn't see fit to try to keep track of it. At one time, the school board was required to come to us every quarter and give us the status of those capital budget items, what they had filled, what they were about to fill, and if there were surpluses or deficits then they were allowed to roll them into another one that they had a surplus or a deficit on to make things meet. Right now, quite frankly, we don't know what's going on with the capital budget. And I was at the school board meeting, I think on the 3rd of this month, whenever it was, and what I heard the superintendent say about capital was somewhat alarming to me about the way they're managing it. We need to get back, we need to get control of this thing, and we need to know what's going on. Because the money's not necessarily being put into places that we would like for it to be put. We fund the capital budget as a separate budget from the school's operating budget. So that, I would make a motion, the items are listed here in writing with whatever edits that the manager has made to my request is fine. So so moved.
Second. Is there a second? All right, we got a second. Questions?
Yeah. I don't know what you asked me for.
You'll figure it out when you see it in writing.
Okay, well, I got to see it in writing before I can vote for it, because I don't know what you, I don't know.
Mr. Pelosi.
Well, thank you, Mr. Brannon.
Your mic's not on. Good.
Sir? Oh.
You have to go to vote for it now and they'll read it later.
That's what, that's right, that's the way you do business.
Well, I think the manager and our CFO were making notes, so I think they understand it. We just have to communicate with the school, and I think what Hood is asking for is Christina did a spreadsheet on our capital items that we had approved, and it showed, I think it was the last 3 years, showed the amount and how much had been spent and what was left under those budgets. So
It's about the same thing that we usually ask for, really. I'm asking for it in a different form than what we usually get it.
Okay.
We usually make a budget request to the schools anyway, so now is the time to do it.
all right. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Okay.
Mr. Pelosi didn't vote for it.
Well, you can read it. You'll understand that when you read it.
All right, you want to go to the town of Bath sewer expansion.
Yeah, we sit in here, I'm sort of sometimes not very friendly toward economic development, because economic development is not, to a lot of people, it's not what I think it is. And we missed the boat on economic development. An issue has arisen with the town of Bath and the building of the sewer line. All this is in flux, so what I'm saying here is based on the best, latest available information, that it could change. But the most recent plan is to build a force main, a pressure line to pump effluent from Bath to Washington. And this is money that Mr. Kidwell claims that he got for us. It's actually money from that the Biden administration has been lathering across the landscape, and quite frankly, governments are having trouble spending it. And this is one of the places that they're putting it. The whole reason for this is Bath has a sewer treatment system that is difficult to manage and has always been difficult to manage those types of engineered systems, especially when you don't have enough space to run the ponds on, and that's been basically their problem. And the plan is they would take that sewage and they would pump it to Washington for treatment in the city of Washington sewer plant. Now, we all talk about economic development. Folks, here's what the key on economic development. You can go out and bring all the drones in here you want to. You can go out and move all of the airports in here you want to. If you don't have a place to put your sewage, nobody is going to come. So if they pump their sewage to Washington, the Washington sewer treatment plant is almost at capacity. And that simply means, under some rule the state has, that once you reach 80% of the volume it was designed for or something, you have to come up with a plan for how you're going to grow or make it bigger, or whether you're going to limit development. They're almost there. They're not there. There are some pump stations around the city that development is being limited in now. And some of my clients have gotten letters that says if you don't put your sewer system in 2 years, you're going to lose the capacity that's been allotted to you, and we're going to give it to somebody else. The state keeps sewer capacity very tightly under control as far as knowing what capacities are for pump stations and treatment plants. And the reason is, remember about 15 years ago or 20 years ago it was, you picked up the newspaper and the headlines every 2 weeks was sewer overflow at so-and-so, sewer overflow at so-and-so. And the reason for that was cities weren't keeping track of it. They were allotting sewer capacity to anybody that wanted it, and nobody worried about how it was going to get delivered to where it could be treated or wherever. So all of that is very tightly controlled at this point in time. My understanding, from what I know right now, is that the town of Bath intends to put the line to Washington of a size that no one will be able to tap into it to add to it. Economic development is sewer capacity. So my understanding also is, Commissioner Deathridge reminded me, that our water systems, franchises in our water systems, are not just for water, they're water and sewer districts. Bath's crossing our water and sewer district with a pressure main. It seems to me as though we may have some say in that. But it also seems to me, whether we have any say in it or not, from the standpoint of economic development for the betterment of the county and to get all of these people in here that people want here, the size of that line is of great significance. Now, I designed some of these systems myself, so if anybody wants to argue with me, come on at it. The size of the line, not the size of the pump, is a critical item in the design. I think you're an engineer. You understand this very well, Mr. Manager. The size of the line is critical for the future long-term use of it. And when you go from, if they were to put in, for instance, I did some calculations. I didn't have time to look at them before I got here, but it seemed to me like the minimum size line, they're only asking for 40,000 gallons a day, which is not very much. And if you take 40,000 gallons and you divide 360 gallons per day per household into it, you wind up with just about the number of houses there is in Bath. So they're limiting themselves with this. This is something that the county needs to look into. And we need to make sure, before this project gets so far along toward permitting, that somebody's telling us that it can't be, we can't expand it or make it bigger. The cost of increasing the diameter of the size of the pipe that's needed is very little. Once you've designed the system and are building the system, changing pipe sizes is not a big deal. So what I'm saying to this board for discussion, and to the manager, who probably knows better than I, having been a city manager himself and an engineer, how do we go about getting our fingers into this so that we know what's going on and we can make sure that these people are building something that's actually going to benefit the county?
Brian?
So I'm happy to have that conversation with the town administrator, Bubs Carson, and talk to them about that. I think that's a great opportunity. The flip side of that too is what is the city of Washington, their capacity and where they are and what they can do. But you're absolutely right on that. I mean, it's an opportunity because where sewer goes, growth follows.
So you will do that. Come back to us at the next board meeting and let us know.
Yeah.
My understanding, just from this is more or less rumor mill stuff, is that an application has not actually been made. So we're very timely on this. And if Representative Kidwell got the money for a minimal system, he can certainly go back and get some more money to make it into a real system.
Well, and the board also has ARPA money that you could, if you wanted to, put toward that. Because you'd have to have some cooperative agreements where, that you would say, if you had a subdivision attached to it, they would have to pay for that piece, so you could essentially buy yourself back as you go,
right.
Those kind of things.
Yes, yes, sir.
Hey, wait a minute, Stan. Yeah, you might have a question for me. Who knows?
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to speak to the same issue and concur with Commissioner Richardson. We're talking about affordable housing in Beaufort County. It's very important. But we're talking about affordable housing because we have utilities for that housing rather than forcing it into areas where it doesn't need to be. Now, if you have an opportunity to have sewer and Bath has got some good soils in some places, got a lot of bad soils in other places. And Hood knows a lot more about sewer engineering than I'll ever know. I do know a little bit about soils, and I do know that Beaufort County has tough soils all over Beaufort County. There's a lot of places where you're just not going to be able to get septic permits. So anytime we have an opportunity to get sewer and get it in areas we normally would not get it into, we need to take every advantage that we have to get that done. And this sounds like a very good place to do it. There's been some talk on the south side of the river where there's a problem, where they're pumping and dumping in a certain area. I'm not going to mention the exact area, but that would be another opportunity for us to get a line in. But when there's other money that comes in from the state or other agencies, and it should be incumbent upon us to always get the proper system, the proper size line, the right pressure, so we will be able to allow other people to tap on. That's just the way it should be. I can tell you right now, a lot of the land in Beaufort County is doing what it's designed to do, grow trees, maybe grow crops, and that's about all it's ever going to do. And you can put systems in a lot easier now than you used to be able to, but if it's a non-conventional system, it's going to cost a lot of money. Conventional systems are affordable, but there's just only so much soil in Beaufort County that can be used. You concur with that, Hood? Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Booth.
Well, I reckon since Hood concurred that with the Bible. Well, no, I got a question to ask you. I understand what you're saying, but you made a statement here that Washington now don't have the capacity. So would you ask that both of the city of Bath and the city of Washington, what would happen if you got those extra lines that you could do it from what you were saying before?
Well, I can tell you that the city of Washington can handle the 40,000 gallons that's been requested. There's still the critical point here, as I understand it, is where they hit 80% of the design capacity of the treatment plant they have, and they're not there yet. And they're looking to the future, so there's thoughts and things going on with this, and that'll be a big deal when that happens, when they have to expand the size of that plant, because it's a lot of money. I'll say one other thing, too. Don't get carried away with having central sewer systems in Beaufort County. You can't afford it unless you want to pay $200, $300 a month for sewage, because putting in gravity systems, pumping sewage around, the number of pumps, because we're flat, the number of pump stations that you would need, and the treatment facilities and all that, it's not in the cards, folks. That's what makes the Bath thing so important. And that is, it's coming from Bath toward Washington with a force main that people could pump into. It's an opportunity that we need to seize.
Well, a prime example of a need is where the Bunyan Fire Department is. They own that adjacent property right there on the corner. And with the DOT plans, they're going to be taking the drain field on that piece of property where they were planning on building and having a drain field. So that would definitely help them in that process. Did somebody else have a comment? Okay. You satisfied?
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
The mayor, manager will report back to us at the next meeting.
All right, you want to go to drug use.
All right, here's the thing, real simple on drugs. Of course, I'm still against drugs. I haven't been swung over yet. It's the worst problem that we have for our people in the United States. I have personally worked with 3 or 4 drug addicts, former addicts, in the last 2 or 3 years. It is sad and it is frightening at what this stuff does to people. The countries that are hanging drug dealers are doing the right thing. Countries that are hanging drug dealers are doing the right things. We need stiffer drug laws, and we need them so that people can't wiggle and worm out of them. But I have a request tonight. We had the sheriff's drug unit came to the Board of Health and gave a a program that lasted about 25 minutes on drugs. It is extremely interesting to listen to these guys because unless you are in the drug culture, if you're in the drug culture, you probably won't want to see this. But unless you're in the drug culture, you need to see what's going on and how things work. It was a very, very informative demonstration. I've spoken to the sheriff, and he is willing to do it if the commissioners will invite him. I would like for us to invite the sheriff's drug unit to come and give essentially the same program that they gave to the Board of Health.
Anybody opposed to that?
I'm opposed to it, but I don't want to know about it.
Okay.
I mean, if he get off, if he leave his resident and walk the street sometimes, you see what these roads do.
Yeah, you're right. I don't disagree with you, Commissioner.
Are you going to invite him, or we're going to let Brian invite him?
Let's let Brian invite him so we can get it worked into the program.
All right. You want to go to the emergency room?
Well, I just want to comment on emergency room to say that nothing has improved that I'm aware of insofar as the quality of service or the quantity of service coming out of the emergency room or the triage. There are opportunities here. Some of the medical facilities have offered to take some of the pressure off of Vidant in the emergency room, and Vidant doesn't want to do it. And the main reason is money, because if they can keep the emergency room chugging full all the time, they're going to make a lot of money. And it's not about health care. It's more about money than anything else. We also have an opportunity, if Vidant would cooperate, for them to return to their original promise and take some of the pressure off the Washington emergency room by opening up some kind of a facility, although limited perhaps, back in Belhaven again. Because they did in Belhaven what we knew they would do from day one. And that is, you got a Band-Aid station down there, and that's about it. So I want to keep the pressure on Vidant. And no, I haven't read the contract yet. Again, I read it 3 or 4 times several years ago, but I intend to read that contract and see what kind of promises they are not keeping.
Well, I've not been to the emergency room in Washington, but I did go to the clinic in Belhaven Wednesday before Christmas. Had a terrible sinus infection and cough. I was over there at 7:30 when they opened their doors, and I was out. In and out in 30 minutes time. There are a lot of things that go on here in Washington that if they would just get in their automobile and drive down there when they, with their hands not all cut up, I mean, they can be seen.
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff
they can be seen
that goes on in an emergency room is not actually an emergency, right. And that's why I talk about triage.
I don't think Belhaven does heart problems, and they send them to Washington. And I know of a situation where a person sat for 8 hours and finally just got up and walked out. I think he accessed his own app about so he saw the test before anybody even told him about it. Test came back normal. He just got up and walked out.
Got up and walked out. All right, we're down to Commissioner Deathridge. You want to take your first one?
Yeah, I'm going to do the first one, if that's all right. One of the largest issues we have in America today is our failing or failed education system. We are falling behind first world countries quickly, too quickly. Some people blame it on COVID. Well, a lot of the world had COVID. We didn't handle it very well in this nation. And a lot of us thought we should have opened everything up a lot quicker. And other people found it to be feasible to keep the nation closed down, keep our schools closed. But that's just part of the problem. I would argue that it's been going on for decades. We've been losing our edge in education. And some people say, well, this is the parents' fault too. Well, they're a product of the education system as well. What I'm asking you commissioners, what I have been asked by my constituents, is that we take an assertive role here as commissioners to ask, not only locally, but everywhere, ask commissioners in other counties. Maybe we can get something going, a role where people that care about education, not about the schools, we're talking about education, reaching young minds, older minds, and getting them to a point where they're learning enough to become functional members of the society. Case in point, I was talking to a guy who managed a large facility in one of the plants here. And he's having a hard time hiring people because the people he's talking to, these young kids, don't know how to read a ruler. I mean, how do you not know how to read a ruler? I mean, it's impossible to even fathom that they would even be able to do fractions. How do you work without not doing fractions? It's crazy. Just Saturday, my wife was in shopping. I was with her. I was wondering why she was taking so long to come out. She bought a product that was 75% off. The people at the front desk, at the cashier, could not do the math. They didn't know whether to take the 75 or the 25. It's a simple word problem. They couldn't figure it because they could not ascertain the logic involved with fractions. There's a logic with fractions, and that's what people are losing is the logic. They think their little handheld devices or a larger device is going to figure everything out for them, and it doesn't. Word problems are life. Some of us even create word problems so that we can solve problems that are larger than the problems that we're given. That's just the way it works. That's how you create stuff. And we're going to become a group of people, an American society, that doesn't create stuff anymore. And that's where we're heading right now. So I've written a resolution at the behest of some of my best constituents. I'm fortunate to be able to meet with my constituents on a monthly basis, and they pretty much tell me what they'd like for me to do. I listen to them and I fashion it into words, and then I bring it to you guys, and I hope that you will pursue this, not so that we can talk people in government in doing better, say at the upper levels, but to get other commissioners at the grassroots to understand there is a problem, and they understand that they have to be part of the solution. Now, we commissioners have the power of the purse. We have the power of the purse all across North Carolina and most of the states and commonwealths. So we do have a part in the purpose of creating a better education environment for our children and our people seeking higher education at all ages. So with that in mind, I'd like to read this resolution. Resolution supporting public education's recommitment to become a true benefit to the productive community that serves this constitutional republic. Whereas the education industry in some certain sectors of our national fabric of instructional academies of intellectual advancement rely far too often on faddish tools of political indoctrination rather than guide the essential intellectual absorption of our citizenry's potentially inquisitive minds so that they may one day be productive members of society. And whereas the political indoctrination of students through stylish pseudo-educational regimens of minute substance such as critical race theory, CRT, and diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, has become the sophistic left's primary tools to create human pawns of low intellect, thereby establishing the fertile soil of intellectual compliance to remake this constitutional republic into one divided by ignorance, simply by shaping developing minds into functional fools. And whereas the real intended purpose of America's funding of public education at all levels, where taxpayers are obligated by their governing representatives, is for our public to attain helpful, beneficial knowledge so that they might become a valuable resource and benefit to themselves, their families, and their communities by functioning as productive members of a working society. And whereas the United States of America, a constitutional republic with a long history, some terrible, but mostly one of exceptional grandeur, as if purposely crafted by the hand of God, so that we might remain his vessels for the greater good, to be his shepherds, to serve as a purposeful part in aiding all of his subjects that live upon this fragile temporal plane of his good earth. Therefore, let it be resolved, Beaufort County's commissioners fully support the proposition that by our representation to our constituents, we are duty-bound to advocate amongst our political peers to join our mission to demand that public education recommit its total purpose to becoming a true benefit to the productive community that serves for the sustainability of this, our constitutional republic. And for that, I'd like to send that to, once we pass this, I'd like to send it to all commissioners in North Carolina.
You make that a motion?
I'll make it a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussions?
This is probably your best piece of work as far as the jambalaya of words. I took this and asked around people much smarter than I, and they just can't figure it out. Is there any way we can make it easier once again? Because it really gets complicated here as to what it is I'm voting for.
Well, what part do you not understand?
Starting at the beginning and maybe to the end.
Is there any place in there that you like an explanation at all?
What are the educational credentials of these people that can't understand this? I'm really curious here. Did they all go to a certain school that I'm thinking of, or maybe?
Well, yeah, I don't want to name names, but some of them are really good with, English, advanced English teachers, retired. And
do they write? Do they ever write themselves?
Well, sure they do.
Okay.
But they've read this thing over and over again, and they said, I just don't understand what. And once again, I think if you wrote it easier, it would allow me to vote for some of this stuff. I hate to see you waste your time.
Okay. Can I answer this? Okay. Patricia Garrison, did you understand any of that? Did you understand most of the words or every word?
The philosophy and the intent of education being to promote the intellect of the individual student, to teach them critical thinking, not to teach them what to think, but how to think. That's the purpose of public education.
Thank you very much.
Ray, did you understand it?
You have to go through the chairman to recognize somebody in the audience stand.
Okay, very well.
Okay?
That's your constituents.
All right.
Arnold, yes?
Did you, cut your mic off. Did you have a question?
No,
Okay.
my mind already made up.
I read it 5 times. I shared it with my wife, and we just, if you could make something simple that said, let's get back to basic, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but you're trying to write it for, I don't know who your audience is. I know you're writing it and it's on your website, but I'm not here. My job is not here to approve some editorial that's out there on the website. So I'm not going to vote for it.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
I'm going to vote for it.
let me caution you guys, you all need to be very careful in what you say and how you attack an item like this, which is really written very sophisticatedly, because it's like I heard a man one time say that his mother said to his sister, sweetie, you really need to be careful what you say, or people might know how smart you really are. You guys need to think about that, because you're putting yourself at a level of I don't understand. And I don't know that that's a smart place to be.
Well, you can speak for yourself. Each one of us has spoken for ourselves. So we're going to call for a vote. All those in favor of this resolution, raise your right hand. Those opposed?
Y'all are against education, right?
No.
Well,
against food.
No, I'm not against education. All you got to do is look when we do the budget. We fund education, so.
No,
that's the problem.
All right, you want to go to your next one, Stan? On the southern border.
Yeah. I brought this up. I'm going to bring this up about every other month. Beaufort County is becoming a border county. We know that. If we don't know that, we should know that here shortly. The numbers we're looking at right now of people coming across the border are going to, I think, and I'm estimating, because this month is crazy. Last month was crazy. But I don't want to use those numbers. I'm using numbers that it'll fall sometime in the summer, but it looks like we're going to get 5.5 to 6 million new illegals in this country next year. Joe Biden, some people call him the imposter president, some people call him their president. He went to the border and they cleaned it up. He saw what they wanted him to see. He's going to do absolutely nothing. He doesn't understand the problem we have. Or maybe he does understand and he wants it to destroy our republic. I don't know. But I can tell you right now, what they're doing is destroying our communities. It is going to destroy our republic. And it's not going to be a slow death. It's going to be a fast death. And it's happening quickly. The amount of fentanyl coming into the country right now is, as Joe Biden said, there's enough in this country right now to kill as many as 1,000 people. Well, it's really enough to kill us probably quite a few times over, all of us. It's not 1,000. This is a very real situation, and having a president that can't think on a level. And again, Randy, some of the people you probably were very brilliant, probably voted for Joe Biden.
He wasn't going to vote for your school board thing either.
But this is not going to be a vote. But I just want us to understand that we have got to put this in the forefront. My constituents are very concerned about this. They're concerned about education. They're concerned about the kind of people that would vote to put people in office that can't think and can't do and can't act and will destroy this republic just because it's for political expediency. Now, I hope I didn't make that too highbrow for you guys, but that is a real problem we have right now. We have very few decades left to keep this republic alive if we don't do something. I'll tell you, one of the things, as a commissioner, as someone who has to fund education, who has to fund the education of illegals coming in that get in our system, I am committed to stopping that southern border leak, and it's a leak all over.
Where are you going to start?
Oh, you can start by getting a president that was acting like our last president we had, who was stopping it and slowing it down, and would have done it if he had had the funding to put that wall up. Okay, anybody got anything to say other than me?
I hate to say this, Dan, but I'd rather have them in Vegas than have 100 of them than have 2 of you.
Okay, gentlemen, we're down to the last item, closed session. Katie, would you read us into the closed session?
Yes, sir. A motion is needed to go into closed session for, I got the wrong one, to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industry or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations, or to discuss matters relating to military installation closure or realignment.
Okay, I need a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second? All those in favor of going into closed session, raise your right hand.
Y'all stay in here, we're going in the back.
Okay, we need a motion to come out of closed session. And a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, no action was taken. So we're down to commissioner reports. Anybody want to use 2 minutes?
I'm good.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Stand up.
Second. All those in favor, stand up.
There you go.
Thank you.